So, I have a confession. This is the first time I actually sat on stage. I've been on stage a lot. First time I'm sitting on stage. What do you think of our stage? What do you think of the audience?
I haven't met the audience yet, but great to be here. And impressive to see so many interested people. I didn't expect that.
Well, we're really glad you're here because your story is incredible. Just for those who may not know, real quick, who are you and what do you do?
My name is Ralf Wenzel. I'm the founder of Foodpanda, a business that I set up 5 years ago. It started as a one-man show. We scaled it to become one of the largest food delivery marketplaces in the emerging markets. End of last year, we merged the company with Delivery Hero, and as of end of June, we successfully went public as one of the biggest IPOs in Europe of the recent years, and yeah, continuing from there.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I'm going to give you a test situation, case study. Sometimes I get tired late at night, and then I go on my phone, and I look up what to eat. I just type in my location, and then boom, the food arrives, usually about 40 minutes. I live in Dublin, Ireland, as I just told him. How is that experience different in Europe and in Asia? What have you noticed going out there that is different from a consumer and customer side of it?
I mean, acknowledging that I'm German as well, probably started in a little bit of a naive way because we were thinking it would work in a very, very similar way across all of the emerging markets. We recognized, wow, emerging markets, there's a fantastic opportunity, a lot of young people, there's even more passion towards food and on-demand type of services, but we started in a way that was very, very similar of how you would be starting a company in Europe. But we recognize that the environment and the circumstances are completely different, and it starts already with the way you localize your service. Marketplace companies are, on the one extent, to the one extent, hyper-local, yes, and to the other extent, they need to be also hyper-personalized. But the level of localization and personalization works very different in some of the emerging markets. Just giving you one example, when we went into a market called Saudi Arabia, not even talking about Southeast Asia, but when we went into a market like Saudi Arabia, we recognized that things like a Google Maps doesn't work properly, that there's not a proper address definition, there are no proper street names, there are no postal codes. So how do you build a service that in Europe works with postal codes? Somebody types in a postal code and then it would show you the selection of restaurants, something that doesn't work in Saudi Arabia, and that's very characteristic for many of the markets. So we had to adapt a lot of the aspects of our business, technology, processes, and we could also only do that by not centralizing too much, which we thought in the beginning, but by giving a lot of authority and a lot of ownership to the local teams, and by finding great local talents and great local entrepreneurs that were helping us to optimize the business towards the local requirements.
So that's a great insight about just the fact that even how countries identify geographically is different. There's also logistics issue. A trip that here in Munich should take, 20 minutes? In Mumbai could take up to 2 hours. So there's just different terrain. But I'm curious, did the business model have to change in any way between operating here and operating some of these emerging markets?
I mean, we started as a typical marketplace company, similar to the likes of a Just Eat in the UK or to the likes of a Grubhub in the US, thinking that we could rely completely on the restaurant's capability to deliver. So without going into logistics, into last mile. So we started with that basically assumption that it would work in a similar way. When doing the first orders and when experiencing the first steps of our business, we recognized that indeed it took 2 hours until the food arrived, and indeed it has been a very cumbersome process to integrate also with the restaurants. And that made us also start the own delivery part of the business. So we moved from being a pure marketplace business towards what we currently call a hybrid business, whereby we do support restaurants that would carry out their own delivery, but at the same time we also had to develop our own delivery expertise and capabilities in order to improve the restaurant's delivery, but also bring delivery to those restaurants which would not have the resources, the technical abilities, or which just wouldn't do the delivery perfectly enough.
So, real quick, who are founders in the room? Can you quickly raise your hand if you've set up a business? Founders? Good. Keep your hands up. How many of you are planning to move to an emerging market with your company? That's the vision. Keep your hands up if you are. A smaller selection. So I'm curious, for some of these guys, and for those who are not thinking about the East, or other parts of the world, emerging markets, what advice do you have from a couple years of working there for these guys? What should they know that you wish you knew at the start of your journey?
I think if you look into also our financials, which recently got public, so it's not a secret anymore, then you would see that regions such as the Middle East, Americas, which refers to Latin America or Southeast Asia, are probably the fastest growing countries. And we have explained that quite comprehensively during the IPO process as well, which is driven by a lot of these secular trends. You have younger demographics, this whole behavioral change happens much faster than in Western Europe. And we thought, and that's what we are experiencing, that a lot of these online services that are currently being launched and developed, they find a much stronger adoption, a much faster adoption in these emerging markets where they meet younger demographics that are much more open, that are much more innovative to a certain extent. And it's not only something that I've seen myself with my own 17-year-old son, that when I call him, wouldn't pick up anymore, but when I text him, he would respond immediately. So this whole change in behavior, it's not only a channel shift from offline to online, but it's a shift in behavior happens in a very, very accelerated way in the emerging markets. So if I were to start a new business, I would still be looking into the emerging markets and into the philosophy of the emerging markets where innovation is being driven at a different pace, where you can find much early adoption. And I think whatever works probably in Taiwan, whatever works in Saudi Arabia, whatever works in, I don't know, Argentina with a complexity involved, has a good chance also to work then in some of the Western countries like Western Europe, other than the other way around.
So I was going to ask, what is driving this change in customer behavior and expectation? Where are they getting this from?
I think if we look into, again, as I said, there are two things that we are observing. The first thing is just that there's existing behavior, like people ordering food for delivery or for takeaway, that is just changing the channel. You used to do it over the phone by calling, and you're now doing it basically utilizing an app or a website. But at the same time, we see that there are completely new behaviors that are developing, that are coming up. And especially the younger demographics, they want everything now, immediately, on demand, while moving as little as possible. There are also many, many more people, especially also then again in the emerging markets, living in cities. There's an increasing degree of urbanization. People live in single households. People want to achieve something career-wise. They're dedicating significantly more work, more time towards work. And hence, every single piece of time that they can save helps them to achieve their goals. And hence, like all of these on-demand type of applications and services, they particularly basically meet the current changes in customer behavior.
So you're in the food delivery business. What are other trends and opportunities that you are spotting in emerging markets? You can be specific about the Middle East or specific countries in South America and Asia, because again, Asia is a massive, massive space. But what are some of the trends and opportunities you're seeing? You're obviously rocking in delivery, food delivery, so there's no chance anyone's going to compete with you there. But what are other spaces people could enter?
I think there's still like significant opportunity when it comes to the entire payment landscape, how people are paying. In the same way as there's like a shift in behavior with regards to like on-demand services, food delivery type of services, there are also like different ways how people would like to pay. Especially the younger demographics embrace like the cashless society more and more, and finding like convenient ways for making a payment is still a large opportunity, because if we're honest, most of the payment processes that we still have are still relatively cumbersome. Introducing a credit card number and the CVC and like all of these type of details, it takes some time. It's not the greatest experience. On the other hand side, we still see that in the food space alone, and I'm not talking about like food delivery, but in terms of how we discover food, what type of food are we eating, creating more transparency around how food is being created, how food is being produced, how food is being delivered to everyone's doorstep. So I think like generally in the food and restaurant landscape, there's much more disruption and innovation potential than what we are doing. And then I think last but not least, this whole on-demand society, which obviously we are trying to cover with everything that is food delivery, which concerns also ride sharing, which concerns like, I don't know, getting pharmacy delivered or like medicine delivered or getting like any type of good delivered here and now and immediately, which is exactly matching these behavioral changes. I think that still has a great opportunity, again, predominantly in some of the fastest growing emerging markets.
That's really valuable insights, and I agree. I'm curious about you for a second. Is that okay?
Yes.
Can we talk about you?
Yeah.
So you studied in Berlin, computer science. You went into Jamba. Then you went into a bookkeeping, money keeping company, into now Foodpanda and delivery. How do you decide what to get involved in? Because you have a habit of touching things that become successful. Just as an insight to people, and I'm curious too, as a fellow entrepreneur, how do you know where to go and what to do? How do you make these decisions?
I think I'm a little bit of a mix. So I studied computer science. So I used to be a techie. At the same time, I'm maybe a bit of an entrepreneur as well, having developed and started certain companies or been part of it. I think the combination of both makes me being interested in something that still has significant growth potential, that has significant innovation potential, and that still embraces like technological challenges. And if I look into our business, the food business and also the food delivery business, I think that this whole food delivery opportunity is probably like where online fashion and like online travel was maybe 10, 15 years ago. So it's significantly earlier. If you also look into most of these food delivery websites and apps, they still look a little bit 90s. Yeah, they don't look like the most innovative user interfaces. So I think like from a technological perspective, there's so much that we can do still. More personalization, more transparency, more innovation. And then at the same time, if you look at the food delivery landscape in our markets, which to like 89% is still offline. So 80%, 89% of the market is still people taking up the phone, calling the restaurant, very intransparent process. So also from a growth perspective, we are significantly earlier than most other companies and most other industries. So I could see myself still for the next couple of years doing what I'm doing now, but I think Delivery Hero also as a company will be a company that in 2, 3, 4, 5 years will look different in terms of the products that we have and in terms of the scale that we have achieved.
Excellent. I have a question. So you founded this by yourself, or was there a team around you when you first began?
I mean, I founded the company myself, but like shortly after, basically like the day after, I found great partners to develop the business with, and I think without those, it would not have been possible. And I think one of the also main ingredients of our success is that we got a very international team of people together.
I was just going to say, because you started there, and now you've got almost 10,000 employees, over 40 countries. What is it like running a mini UN, probably more successfully than the UN? What is that experience like?
Yeah, hopefully the UN can be more successful than us, at least like from a political perspective. But I think what we have been iterating on over the last years was always to which degree do we centralize versus to which degree do we give a lot of ownership and responsibility to the respective countries. And there's always like a discrepancy in between, right? And obviously you would always want to centralize as much as possible because you have significant efficiency gains. On the other hand side, if you centralize too much, you're losing out on this like hyper-local aspect and building an experience around these local customers and solving some of these local complexities. And I think the biggest challenge for us over the last years has been really finding the right balance between localization and centralization. And we now have certain processes, certain product components that we run centrally, but at the same time we are still a group of, let's say, many individual companies where every single business, the business in Saudi, the business in Southeast Asia, the business in Korea, is still run by the local entrepreneurs that have been starting those businesses with us, or which have been starting these businesses and we later on acquired those businesses. So for us it has been extremely important to retain those entrepreneurs on a local level, to incentivize them in the right way, and to give them the right level of freedom. And keeping that in the balance, which we call like the delivery hero model, because there's no book written about how much do you localize versus how much do you centralize. I think that has been an important ingredient of our success.
Speaking of which, I've got 2 last questions for you, mostly piece of advice for people. Would you, okay, actually, I'm not going to tell you the prompt, because I was going to give you the answer. I hate when people ask you questions with the answer in it. What do you think is the most valuable ingredient? Because there's no book written on this, if you were to write the book now, what is the most important ingredient for anyone who's planning to expand anywhere internationally? What is the one thing they should keep at the forefront to be successful?
I think you can't focus enough on finding the right team. And getting the best possible talents, and especially getting that team and those talents that complement you. So we had like a management team and a team of founders where every one of us has been a little bit different. So we complemented each other. And in addition to that, to get a team that is very, very international. Because nowadays you don't solve these problems being like a German company with like a German team. You only solve those problems if you get like international people together that have like different perspectives, that have like different cultural backgrounds. And I think that's the only way of how you can successfully build a business in Germany, but also outside of that.
Fantastic. And last question, what's next for you?
No, as I said before, I think Delivery Hero is
Sticking with it?
extremely early still, so we have a lot to achieve, a lot to accomplish, and hence you will still find me for the next couple of years co-running the Delivery Hero business.
Excellent, super. Before you go, just really quick, does anybody have a question for Ralf? I know we haven't done as much Q&A this year, but I'm just wondering, does someone have a question? Just raise your hand, because this is for you guys. Anyone got a question? Anyone planning to go international or curious about internationalization of your startup or your company? Yes. Can you quickly come run up? And I'm just going to give you this mic over here. Just your name and your question, please.
Hello, everybody. So thank you for allowing me to do this. The question is delivery, and it causes a lot of fears in sort of traffic in big cities and so on. So there are a lot of side effects when delivery is in. So it's about the logistics. So do you also plan, to have some ideas or plans on to reduce the traffic in the bigger cities? So you got it?
Super. Do you have that question?
I think indeed we have become kind of like a logistic company ourselves as well, but we're not necessarily carrying out the food delivery via cars. I think the most used method of transportation in our business would be like bicycles or even motorbikes, and in some of the cities we even use walkers, or we are leveraging the public transport. I think where we could help to make traffic become easier is that we're sitting on a lot of data. So we always know the traffic streams. We know the movements of our riders throughout the city. We take into consideration traffic jam information as well. And based on the fact that like online companies such as ourselves that have like a hyper-local delivery approach leverage and use a lot of data, I think we can use the data at one point of time not only for our own benefit, but to also allow other people to get access to that data, to ease traffic, or to get an understanding about like food preferences and many other things.
Final question. Do you deliver by drone?
We've carried out a number of tests, but I think there still need to be like a lot of things clarified from a political perspective and from a compliance and legal perspective.
Airspace perspective, yeah.
I think technically it works, and we would be prepared. So hopefully over the next couple of years there will be like a better environment for doing so. Again, I expect that to happen first in emerging markets, then probably in Germany. And
I have seen YouTube videos. What would be great is if you come back next year to Bits and Pretzels and we get a pizza delivered by drone and it just lands here perfectly while we're chatting.
I fly in with a drone then. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ralf. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Guys, let's give him a hand, please.
Thank you.